Hey all. So second war of this season 28. I was actually on the road for this one. I had to do a couple of my fights in the car, wasn't able to do my normal input on planning. So I don't necessarily have the full picture for all of this. But I'm going ahead and talking over these first two fights because honestly these are kind of nothing nodes unless you're looking at very specific defenders. I wasn't sure when I joined initially whether I would end up taking this Phoenix with Claire or Reed. We had just assigned me with either. But ultimately, between Kinetic Transference and the fact that she gains power when she throws her L1, Claire shuts down her Furies and nullifies all that, but I just figured I would have more control over it with Reed, and I wasn't really worried about her healing or doing anything else weird. So notice how much Reed is already cutting down the kinetic transference. She's still gaining power, but it's manageable, right? And this really speaks to, I think, just how flexible he is, because Claire is one of my favorite champions in the game, has a ton of broad-based utility, but I still feel more comfortable with Reed in certain fights. Like this one, where there's any kind of power gain that she can't turn off by nullifying something, right? So this is actually one of the rare fights where I very quickly get the Careful Study passive up, and you can see how much it's spiking my power gain. I always tell people, no, Reed does not need the dupe, but I do my best to add on, it helps too, right? Because that got us to that L2 just a little bit faster before she went to regen, and therefore we were reversing it, and as soon as her invulnerability went away, she was down. Sunspot on Matador is a complete nothing, honestly. Um, in another war, there's actually a decent chance that we might have bothered to charge an apocalypse here, so we could make a horseman out of somebody without having to bring Cable or Sinister. We didn't end up needing that, I'm supposing, but I've seen before, I think it was Taters was one of the first ones I saw say that throwing a mutant on a nothing node early on is worse than using a 4-star in some cases, just because of how much flexibility you are giving to the other team for charging up one of the best war attackers who can then supercharge some of the other best war attackers. With the state of mutants right now, I would place a 5-star like Hyperion or maybe even a Quake over this Sunspot, honestly. Anyway, the node has Matador, which is why I did not throw on my suppression pre-fight. I threw on Debuff Siphoner just in case I got hit and just to get extra attack. And if you're going to throw on Debuff Siphoner, if you don't have a reason to use Petrify, or if you don't have a reason not to use Petrify, then you might as well turn it on so that you can reverse that healing, get extra damage, and just, do slow, void-like, constant damage. Makes the fight that much easier. Down he goes. So now Reed's plenty supercharged. I've got all the pre-fights I want, which is going to come in handy. And now we have what some people have called my trademark fight, Torch versus Sasquatch on Encroaching Stun. Done this literally dozens of times at this point, but it does help to have Reed on the team. We're not going to bother with Debuff Siphoner because we're going to use Torch's own pre-fight, and so all it would do would be reduce the potency of Sasquatch's ruptures, and I'm not planning on getting hit. However, we can tone down Mystic Dispersion with Petrify, and we can reduce the overall number of specials that I need to dodge or otherwise deal with by throwing on Suppression, so those are kind of gimmies here. The other thing I've talked about before is that when Reed is on the team, Torch or any other Fantastic Four player slowly gains a bar of power at the start of the fight, which is extremely helpful on Encroaching Stun. Now right there, I don't know what happened, man. Like I said, I was doing some of these fights like in between events. Maybe that was the parry bug. Maybe I was just fully off. Yeah, and I should have thrown that special one from further away to try and make it safe so I didn't get countered. But even so, I still have plenty of power. I haven't been fully backed up. There's Wrath of Tanorak right on cue. Days like this, you just know that it's going to be early because you don't have your indestructible anymore, right? So of course he's going to go into it quickly and try and back you up. That said, now it's over. Notice how I was baiting out those heavies because he can't block for a short window after the unstoppable expires. And that means that if you throw a multi-hit special like Torch's Special 1 into that unstoppable, it will still catch him and knock him down, and you will be safe from retaliation. And therefore you can play around Encroaching Stun safely. So, messiest that fight has gone in quite a while, but especially with some help from Reed and a well-placed indestructible boost, turned out fine. And honestly, even without the indestructible boost, that would have been pretty terrifying, taking 3 more hits, but it still should have been fine. Torch has a fair bit of leeway on that. Now, this Maw fight is kind of an unconventional matchup. I have taken it before and had it go very well, but I want to talk about the game plan real quick. So you use all of Reed's pre-fights, and the idea, as with the Phoenix node, is that you are blunting kinetic transference by 40%. Because of suppression, you are going to blunt aspect of evolution because he's going to get fewer specials in the first place, and you are just accepting that at some point he's going to throw back-to-back L1s and you're going to get that 1 degen on you. But the idea is, get to your L2 as quickly as possible and only eat the 1 degen. Which is why last time I took this I used a power start. Notice that I just completely forgot this time. Now, the other thing that can happen here is if Maw refuses to give Reed any openings for his heavy, then you will lose your starting debuffs, and the only way to get them back is to get back to that special 2. So notice there I tried to heavy after that medium out of desperation, did not work. This guy has Mystic Dispersion maxed, it seems like. I was getting desperate there, attacked into the Falter, got an extra degen that I did not need to hit, or need to take. I've done almost no damage at this point, and I throw this and miss again because I haven't been able to heavy against him. And at this point, I've kind of lost all hope. I'm seeing why this is not at all a foolproof fight, because basically if he just refuses to give you openings for heavies, then all of the advantages of this particular matchup start to go away. And so, as much as I love Reed, I'm not sure I'm going to end up going for this again. Because even with the power start, I would have been set up better, but it's still possible that in that window there where he didn't give me openings, I would have been backed up the same way and lost the double debuffs, and that would have hurt just as much as losing a single stack of them. So here I'm going to go ahead and revive. I'm going to use, or I'm going to heal back up. And I am going to use a power start going back in. Lovely on the potion stash. That's really the worst. Well, it's not the worst part about dying. The worst part about dying is that when the team loses because of you. But I did know that we were in pretty good shape on this one, so now I'm slightly scared about running out of potions and potentially letting the team die in a future war. Not that I would let that happen. That's when you just buy potions, right? But that always sucks. Anyway, still boosted. Realize there I accidentally hit the wrong gray boost. Pain. But we'll get them back, at least it's predictable now. I replace it with the power start, and now I have all of my pre-fights, I have my power start, I'm fully healed up, I'm focused, I know what to do. And the power start doesn't work. You see that right there, that it said synthesis, but for some reason only gave me like 30% of a bar of power before I started going. So I should already be at 2 bars of power, But instead, I'm not there yet, and I have to worry about if this will actually knock him down in time. I managed to by the skin of my teeth, but that shouldn't have even been close. So now he's starting to back me up again, and I know that I'm just going to have to wait out this falter, but here's where I decide to do things a little differently. Don't quite manage it, but honestly, if I ever do take this again because there just isn't another option, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to back up all the way into the corner so that I can safely counter his heavy with Reed. Now, at this point, some people may say, well, the second fight isn't going that much better. Why not just use Torch? And I very well may, especially with Reed's pre-fights, but the biggest issue with Torch is that if he just mediums into you, you may end up just eating endless special 2s, boosted by Aspect of Evolution so that they do a ton of block damage, and that's not really a great thing either. So at least there we were able to heavy him off the wall, and at this point I'm fairly confident that I'm going to be able to salvage this. We're reversing willpower here. I just kind of need to hold him until he dies. Remember that because we have that Careful Study passive up, we blunted the damage of that special by 75%, which is another thing that Torch wouldn't have necessarily had. But I'm not happy with that matchup either, right? Like, Torch has his issues, but that was clearly not safe, even though I have another recording of that fight on this channel where it was safe. And so that's just too AI dependent for me. I'm going to be looking into other ways to get through that cleanly. Honestly, next time we may just go Archangel, drop a Petrified pre-fight on him and just nuke it. Might be safer. Anyway, it's never fun to die, but I remember for these last 2 fights, I couldn't dwell on those because these ones I was waiting to be cleared, and these are the 2 I was doing in the car. And this Terrax, once before, I have died to this fight before. I don't think I have Sense Protection dropped, which means that it's a lot easier than it used to be, but I have healthy respect for this guy all the same. I know exactly how hard his guaranteed crit during Rockfield can hit, and I fully intend to not get a reminder here. So another reason that this is easier now without Protect is that you can safely parry heavy, which makes it much easier to take advantage of the polka dot power aspect of the node, and for Claire to get a bunch of specials. And if Claire can get a bunch of specials, Claire can do a bunch of damage without getting backed up and dying, and that's just way better. So there, I took some extra damage that I didn't necessarily need to. I could have just backed up and waited for the rock field to expire, but getting that L2 in with 40% extra attack after removing the stun shield felt like a worthy gamble in this case. Here we're going to get another one in. Note that the direct damage, the 2900 per hit, is not boosted by that 40% attack. Nothing affects it. Like, it cannot be reduced by most nodes, it cannot be boosted by masteries, boosts, or anything else. But at least it's reliable, right? But the actual hits that we land and any crits that we get are still boosted, so I do consider it worth it to try and throw those specials in those windows. Anyway, like I said, took a little bit of damage that we didn't necessarily need to, but ended over 50%, not going to use Claire for another fight. Absolutely worth it. Much better than that went for me the last time I took this, I believe. Much easier now with Protect gone. Extremely safe option. Yeah, definitely going to be repeating that one. So then we have this Symbiote Supreme. I had to wait for... oh, that's what it was. I was going to wait for the White Magneto pre-fight to be placed so that I could safely stun. Speaking to how chaotic this war felt to me, I'm already taking a fight in the car. There was actually a miscommunication, and our White Magnetos were spoken for elsewhere. So I did not have the pre-fight available. Notice there was the first stun that I had actually inflicted throughout this fight. Before then, I'd been baiting heavies. those pre-fights from Reed are all coming in handy here. We're getting, suppression, which I think is mostly just functioning to fuel despair. We were getting petrified to blunt his power gain and to further feed despair and reverse willpower. The debuff siphoner was boosting all of our incinerates by 25%. And so as long as I just stayed aggressive, pretty easy torch fight. That's kind of where he shines. It would have been safer if I'd been able to freely parry heavy, but no big deal, went down anyway. We thankfully ended up winning this one, and we need to chain a few more. We are down here because of how we performed in previous seasons, so I'm not putting that on anyone else. But it definitely would have been nice if Kabam had expanded Tier 1 the way that they said they were going to, because now that they've shrunk the win bonus, I know I keep harping on this, just multiplier is so incredibly important. And when we're facing people who have rosters like on the level of Masters Alliances, defenses on the level of Masters Alliances, and offenses on the level of Masters Alliances, it would definitely be nice to get those extra few points for our work, right? Anyway, I do think that we have put together a group that will do really well this season. I'm hopeful for how it's going to go, and we'll see from here on out. Let me know how your season's going thus far. I lagged a bit behind because, like I said, I had a trip this weekend, but I do plan to get these out more regularly right as wars finish up. So if you're enjoying these and want to catch more, please consider subscribing. Leave a comment. Let me know how your war's going, what fights you've been taking, and I will catch y'all next time. Take care.